Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about something you guys, if you watch our videos, you know a lot about carburetors. We change a lot of them. So if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to our channel and like our videos. So if you watch us at all during the night at the racetrack, we change a lot of carburetors. You see Red Beard sitting there with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth.
Hi, Paul.
Changing the carburetor. So just got us some new carburetors from Stealth. They just came in today. They hooked me up with this badass green one. So this thing is awesome. Jason says it's gonna be on the car all year long. We're not changing it. So just because it looks so cool. I run a Super Bowl system. These are Stealth carburetors with a Willys Super Bowl. A lot of people don't understand Super Bowls, don't know much about them. I'll try to answer a few questions today about them. I've been on them, I think maybe this is gonna be probably our 5th or 6th season on them. So I've been on them for quite a while. So Willys Carburation out in Mount Carmel, Illinois, they actually make the Super Bowl setup. Basically what it does is, if you don't know, there's no floats in these carburetors. It works on a return system and at a level in there. So it's really slick. They actually say these carburetors would run up to like a 45 degree angle or better because there's just no floats. So you know, when you get on a rough racetrack and the floats are going up and down, or it stumbles in the corners or stumbles on the straightaways, it's always a float level problem. So these have eliminated all those issues. They're a little more money, but they are night and day better. You cannot believe how much better the motors run. For a long time, I wouldn't even tell people about them. I just say they're okay because I feel like they're that big of an advantage. I also think it's dumb when series don't allow them, because it's really not that much money for a way better product, and they hold their value well. So the Super Bowl system, I feel like a lot of guys that have tried them and have not liked them have had other issues other than the Super Bowl. There is some key things you do need to do. You need to run a better fuel pump. He can make them work. They got to change some stuff if you don't have as much volume. But the way the return works on this with a siphon, you need a lot of flow to siphon the fuel out of the bowls on the return line. So therefore, it's recommended that you have at least a 3.5 gallon a minute pump or bigger. So we've been running the 4 gallon a minute pumps for probably 3 years now. So I feel like a lot of people that have tried to make them run on the 3 gallon a minute pump or less maybe have had some issues. I'm not saying it won't work. The other thing is the return line is very critical. You need to run -8 return line. It needs to be ran as straight as possible. Very few, as minimal uphill kinks and curves as possible to return back to the tank. The other thing is you need to change the vent in your fuel cell. It returns so much fuel that it takes a high flow vent. So if it gets any back pressure in there, it won't run right. So you have to put in a high flow vent. I recommend that you put in the bigger one, which is a -8 or the 2-6s. So that's definitely not that big of a deal. It's kind of some cells that are thinking about to change the vent out. And then you do not want to run a filter on that vent hose. Typically we kind of loop it up as high as we can to the deck, and we loop it all the way back down, pretty much down to the bottom of the frame rail. So it's below the fuel cell. And haven't had any issues. It's amazing how good your car runs. I highly recommend the ERP pump, formerly Waterman. Waterman got bought out by Aeromotive, but now they're ERP Machinery, the same company that used to make the Watermans. High quality pump. I can get these for you if somebody needs them. I usually keep a couple in stock. Been on for quite a while. Jack Hickman, that was with Waterman, is there now. So he's in North Carolina. The pumps are made, I think, out west somewhere. But Jack's really good to deal with. So that's a little bit about Super Bowls. Another thing is, a lot of people don't realize is that you actually can put the Super Bowl, a lot of carburetors, you can go ahead and put Super Bowls on your carburetor. You don't have to buy just a Willys Super Bowl. Pretty much any carburetor manufacturer can put the Super Bowls on there. The one thing you do need is, if you want to put Super Bowls in your carburetor, your primaries has to have the shaft come through and be threaded there on the end to take this arm. A lot of our carburetors in the past had just like a freeze plug in there, and that arm did not stick out. But a lot of carburetors are this way. So if your carburetor does have that shaft that comes through and it's threaded, you can put Super Bowls right on your carburetor. It's not very hard. I know it kind of looks intimidating. It's very simple to do. I've done it a few times, and then basically all you're doing is buying the Super Bowl setup, which I think is around $1,000. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like it's well worth the investment. I prefer to change carburetors. I run carburetors anywhere from inch 500 down to inch and a quarter size. So right here we got inch 375, inch 450, and another inch 450. I do feel like, you know, a lot of people aren't as fortunate, can't have multiple carburetors. My opinion is that the inch 450 carburetor for like an open late model is the best all-around carburetor I've ever ran. It's ran on 440s, 450s, 430s, 415s, SB2s, 11 degrees, 13 degrees. I just feel like this is probably the go-to carburetor, best all-around mud, slick, just all-purpose carburetor. For me, that I found is that inch 450 is the best size, right? Obviously, some motors are different. Some motors like bigger carburetors, some like smaller carburetors. So I do have a variety, and it definitely depends on the track condition. Another option, one other thing about Super Bowl, they do the fuel will return. Like when you drive your car down the road, the trailer it down the road, and you get to the track, you do need to fill up your float bowls like we do with alcohol days. Stealth gives you a little squirt bottle. You just fill up the bowls. You only got to do it once. You only got to do it the first time you get to the track, and usually it's not every night, but most of the time. And it's only when you trailer it because it just kind of siphons back down the return line the way it's made. It's not going into your motor. A lot of people think it does. It does not. But like I say, you only have to do that at the beginning of the night, just like on alcohol. Once you do that, you're fine. Even if you're at the same track for a 2-day show, you don't even have to do it the next day. It's only when it trailers down the road, for some reason, it kind of vibrates and siphons it back into the tank. So there's some information about the Super Bowl stuff. Another option a lot of people do is, which most people know about this, it's no secret any day, but Wares has a really nice spacer. Of course, the insert's not going to pop out of it right now. Been lost in the trailer, but this spacer just pops right out, or should. It's been sitting in the trailer for a minute here. So that spacer pops out, and you got different inserts. So obviously that's a small one. This is an open one. So they do make an angled one now too. A lot of people really like to change the restrictors. I'm more of a carburetor guy. I do restrict once in a while. But a lot of people prefer to restrict and not change carburetors. Like if you're a one carburetor guy, you don't have multiple carburetors, you definitely want to get a restrictor program. It makes major gains when you can figure out what to do in the right conditions. All-Star and other manufacturers, they make a deal to where you got to drop in 4 separate inserts. So that's not always a bad thing because you can maybe put smaller ones in the secondaries and bigger ones in the primaries. So that can be a nice option sometimes. A lot of people want to know when to do what. Well, in my experience, every motor is different. So I've had several 430 11G motors, and one might like to be restricted and one might not like to be restricted. You know, one likes this carburetor, one might like I say, everything pretty much likes inch 4.5, but you know, one might like the inch 3.75 and a slick, but not the inch and a quarter. So that's the unfortunate part. It's not really like it's a right and a wrong answer. Unfortunately, that's something that you have to play with and experiment with to figure out what you like, because everybody drives a little different and every motor is a little different. So there's not really a right and a wrong answer there. Unfortunately, that's just experience based. Guys, I highly recommend these Willys throttle return spring brackets and throttle stop. If you haven't ran these, I love them. They sit on here. They have a bolt right here, so you can bolt it down. So when you change carburetors, take it off, that stays all hooked up. These two run right down here to the bottom. So it works really nice. It's like the right amount of tension. It also has another spring here. This thing kicks up, goes to your secondary. So therefore, I've never had my secondaries want to hang up on me. Since that happens, which sometimes, you know, that it gets a little sticky. So definitely recommend these Willys throttle spring brackets. It has your throttle stop on it too. You definitely want to run a throttle stop. The only thing is, make sure, sometimes you got to tweak this a little bit to make sure it's hitting good and square on the throttle rod here. But definitely run a throttle stop. Otherwise, you can twist this. It's not good on the carburetor, right? And your linkages. So you definitely want to run a throttle stop. They do make this available for 2 barrels as well, for some of the 2-barrel classes. The only downfall is if you have like a Braswell winning edge, sometimes they don't have it where it hangs down, so it's kind of not an option on your primary springs, but I still run it for my throttle stop and my secondary spring. Fuel filter. Willie does recommend that you run his fuel filters. There's guys that definitely run your regular old school paper filter. I think the big advantage with this filter is why Willie likes it is, it's O-ring, it's sealed, right? There's an O-ring in here, so there's no debris that can get through there. And I had never even thought about this, but if you think your old school paper filters with the spring on one end, the other end just friction to fit, and they're up against the house. There's no O-ring or positive seal. So as you're bouncing around the racetrack and all the vibrations from the race car and the bumps and stuff, it can actually shake with that spring and let dirt pass that filter. And I had never thought about that until Willie explained to me why we want to run these, right? I do wish this filter was bigger. Being as small as it is, you definitely need to clean it more often, especially I feel like nowadays we have more problem with our foam and our fuel cells. Like some are worse than others, but definitely we stay up on the maintenance on this quite a bit more than we used to on our big paper filters, just because there's just not near as much volume. So I do wish he would make a bigger one, but if you go this route, it has a lot of benefits. It is a stainless element, so you can wash it out, but I do recommend holding it to the light and making sure you can see through there really good. Even though you clean it out and you don't see any debris, the little holes will get plugged up. So even that being said, I do recommend placing these probably at least once a year, depending on how much you race. Like at the end of the season, I would clean it frequently, but replace it at the end of the season, because I definitely have seen these, not just these, pretty much that goes for any stainless filter. You think you have it clean until you hold it to the light and you can't really see any light. Like this one right now, I can see a ton of light, but once they get little things in there, you think you have them clean and you don't have them all the way clean. So I highly recommend replacing this once a year, depending kind of how much you race. Like we race a lot, but with the small filter, stay up on it, but it definitely is really good with that O-ring. It doesn't let anything pass through, and that's beneficial in the Super Bowls with the bows and the return, and there's a couple of jets in there to make the system work right? So Willie's highly recommends this as well. I think that pretty much covers everything I had to talk to today about carburetors. So if there's any questions, we'll do our best to respond to them.